Welcome to Season 2020, Episode 3. In this week's show, Dorna's latest 2020 calendar. Who is really choosing riders within Ducati? And we're on the couch with Dovi's psychologist. This is the Pecino Report. Hello and welcome to the Pecino Report, the official podcast of PecinoGP.com, hosted by me, Dave Gill. This is the podcast that proves there may not be any racing out there at the moment, but there sure as heck is some news out there at the moment. The news is flooding in. And as always, I've got my regular co-hosts surrounding me and supporting me, and there's the big man waiting in the wings. I can see him nodding at me now, but we'll just quickly flick over to Andra. Andra, how was your day? I believe you've got some homework done for us.
Do you know what? Because we're having all these exciting times at the moment, trying to look at the benefit of being locked up. Today I watched fastest and over half of Hitting the Apex. And a week ago, I think we've mentioned in the other podcast, a week ago, you could have shown me a photo of Valentino Rossi. I would have had no idea who he is. I'd heard his name, would not have recognised him. I'm getting a bit obsessed already. We're meant to ease into this, but yeah.
You're just enjoying the Brad Pitt commentary, aren't you, Andra?
So,
welcome to the normal world.
Oh,
yeah. Exactly.
It is, but it's such a whole other world, and it's just, it draws you in.
All right, straight off the bat, Valentino Rossi, hot or not?
Oh, absolutely hot. What sort of question? That's not even a question, David. Not even a question.
But is that Valentino now or Valentino 10, 15 years ago?
Oh, anywhere after 16 years of old, because that's probably the safest way to answer. Is that the right? Is the age different in different countries?
Politically correct. That's okay. I like it.
Thank you.
We'll let our listeners. We'll let our listeners let us know that. Stu, how you doing, mate?
I'm going good, thank you, Dave. Hello, Andra. Hello, Manuel. How are we all out there? My day's been reasonably quiet today. I've just been boning up on a little bit of MotoGP history after the last podcast. That got me very interested in some of those cancelled GPs and some of the scandals that's happened in the past. So I'm getting a lot of the passion back for MotoGP again, which may have faded out after the last couple of years, but it's been a good day. Yeah, thanks.
I believe there was some virtual training going on today for you as well.
There was some virtual training indeed.
Ooh.
Yeah, with what's very topical with the COVID crisis at the moment. Everyone's getting into MotoGP virtual esports, so I thought I'd have a bit of a go at that for a while. Again, I haven't picked up the controller for a while, so my 2 hours allotted time slot in my house was given over equally to MotoGP and F1 on the Xbox.
Did you fit into your virtual leathers like you did last time?
No, I virtually spilled out of my leathers. I need 3 sets of virtual leathers and then stitch them all together, and then I might fit. I'm basically a full-size cow.
And that laughing you can hear in the background is the man himself, Mr. Manuel Pecino. How are you, my friend?
Hi, friends from Australia. I can't tell you about my day because it hasn't happened yet. So you are finishing, I am starting. So maybe you can you can tell me how my day will be because you already went through it.
It's going to be wonderful, Manuel. I'm just looking in the time machine here. I can tell you the lotto numbers this afternoon will be great. Oh, my line's cut out. Sorry.
Look, you've got this is a big day for us. We've got some news that's very, very hot off the press. Manuel, sort of help us understand what's coming out of Dorna at the moment.
Yeah, in our previous podcast, I think we mentioned that everything can change. What we say one day can be old-fashioned the other one. Indeed, and this is exactly what happened. Carmelo gave an interview to a Spanish newspaper here, saying things that I was really surprised about, because he even mentioned the possibility of not having a championship this year, although he underlined that this would be an extreme situation. But what can be more logical, what we can more expect is a championship with 10 Grand Prix. Okay, he said that he has spoken with the International Motorcycle Federation, and as you know, a championship had to have at least 13 Grand Prix to be considered a world championship. Mm-hmm. But with this exceptional situation, the federation admits 10 Grand Prix at the minimum to give the okay as a championship.
So the next question that I immediately have there for you, Manuel, is, does that mean that they're going to include the results from the virtual Grand Prix?
Well, Stu, I think Ducati won't like it because they are not there. They were not invited.
Yeah, exactly.
The question it's immediately springing to mind was that why is 13 the magic number? I mean, the first Grand Prix were 6, if my memory is correct, and if
the first few seasons,
10,
why was? Hang on, this was 72 years ago. Many things have changed in the last 72 years.
True.
They can get to places faster.
Those first GPs, Manuel, didn't you?
Sorry?
You covered those first GPs, didn't you?
Well, yes, it was in black and white. Instead of taking photos, it was paintings, you know?
So why is 13 the magic number? Why was 13 set? Is this purely from a sponsor-driven perspective?
Look, what we do again here is speculating, but I think that it's a number that Carmelo, the owner of the CEO of the championship, knows or imagine he can run.
Okay.
You know, I think he has a plan which we don't know, but I think this number is what he thinks he can do.
Fair call.
So when would everything need to kick back off then to be able to fit in those 10?
Again, I think we have to imagine the championship from backwards to forwards, right? So we have Valencia at the end of November, then we have these 4 overseas races that are Australia, Malaysia, Japan, and Thailand. And then we are already in 5. So another option which I consider would be very strange. Look, imagine to do the 10 Grand Prix in Europe is very easy, you know, because you move very quickly and it's very cheap. So maybe...
So you're saying to cut the flyaways?
So maybe, yes, to cut the flyaways. It would be strange, but it would be a very easy way to get to these 10 Grand Prix that he needs. And I tell you something more.
It's going to be very difficult for the Australians to watch 10 Grand Prix back to back, week after week at that time of night.
Well, we probably won't be going anywhere.
Yeah, I suppose, yeah.
And this, another thing I was thinking about, and this situation may open the alternative of this special, strange Grand Prix in Qatar that we mentioned in our previous podcast, you know, because... As you know, they raced Moto2 and Moto3 in Qatar at the March 8th. So there are MotoGPs missing there. And I know that the Qataris are probably the one in the world with less problems to finance this race.
The old adage of if you throw enough money at it, you can solve it.
Oh.
So
I've never seen that not be true, to be honest.
Exactly. That's what I was going to say.
So there's been no talk.
Before we progress, can I just press? Hang on, Dave, before we go on. Because I've noticed recently as well that the World Superbike Championship, they're actually shifting some of their rounds. I think possibly the French and a Spanish round, they're shifting to the end of the year. Is there thought of putting some of the rounds that we've already missed or we're going to miss on the end of the year, like tacking them back on?
In Dorna, who are also the organizer of World Superbike, they basically say that Superbike is the smallest problem they have. They don't even think about it. And if you go through, nobody speaks about World Superbike. It's just, when will MotoGP happen? When will MotoGP happen? So World Superbike, Andra, this maybe you don't know yet. It's like the second division of motorcycle racing. Okay. They are
harsh, but true.
The riders go from that competition up to GP, or is it a whole separate?
They try a lot of the time, yeah. And realistically, so the main difference is, you know how you've got Bathurst supercars, that's with Hollands and Fords that you would realistically buy on the shop floor, but then you've got Formula One there for these complete prototype cars that you can't buy.
Okay.
It's the same difference. So MotoGP is bikes that are complete prototypes that you can't really buy anywhere, whereas World Superbike is with, you know, ones that you buy off the shop floor. As they say, race on Sunday, buy on Monday.
Same way different.
If you ask the Superbike riders if they are as fast as the MotoGP riders, obviously they will say yes. If you ask the MotoGP riders about the Superbike riders, they are very polite and they said, well, it's a different world,
Yeah. But there's all that riding between the lines. Yep.
Yeah, but at the end, racing are numbers, and most of the guys who switched from World Superbike to MotoGP didn't do well. The gap is too big, in my opinion.
Yeah. Yeah. Who's succeeded? Can we spend 30 seconds and just have a think about who's really succeeded?
Succeeded means what? Colin Edwards.
Colin Edwards.
You are Troy Bayliss. You are Troy Bayliss.
Troy Bayliss.
Succeed is to win a race.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he really succeeded at MotoGP though, did he? He was a very much a flash in the pan. He'd spent his career in superbikes.
Yeah, and we can also put in this package Nicky Hayden. He came from Superbike USA.
Yep. God rest his soul, indeed.
He came over very young, so basically he finished to build up as a rider in MotoGP. You know. Yeah.
So the list is very
nicely
short.
put.
And the other way around, you can see the other way around. We have seen different riders getting world champions in Superbike. We saw Gintoli get world champion. We have seen Max Biaggi getting world champion. We have seen Carlos Checa getting world champion. You know, riders who didn't do especially well in Grand Prix, but did win in Superbike.
Did Melandri make it to the top of the podium?
Melandri won 22 races in Superbikes.
In Superbike, what about in GP though? He didn't, did he?
Yep.
Yeah, he won. He finished runner-up.
Didn't win a championship though.
He finished runner-up 1 year behind Valentino Rossi.
Yeah. I can just hear the listeners screaming through the dashboard of the car.
Don't you know this? You're an idiot! It was in 2000 and blah, and he won X amount of races. Come on, people. We'll be more prepared next time.
This is a really good segue into the next part we wanted to talk about, and we hinted at this in the previous episode of how teams physically go about preparing who to put on their bikes. They said they spend millions upon millions of dollars, and I put that question to you, earlier today, Andrew, of how much do you think a MotoGP bike's worth? And look,
I was a bit wrong, wasn't I?
but how a team chooses to put a rider on for the season. He said, Manuel, you've hinted that you've got some insight into especially how the Bologna factory go about putting essentially a bum on a seat. I said it's no small task, and the amount of thought that goes into that is quite incredible.
Yeah, look, obviously there are 3, 4, 5 riders that are the top riders, okay? But at the moment where these riders are hired by any factory, the rest has to do an analysis of the situation. Look, talking about Ducati especially, we have seen that Ducati has lost the opportunity to hire Maverick Viñales, to hire Fabio Quartararo, to hire Marc Marquez, and to hire even Joan Mir. So in Bologna now, in Ducati, they have to sit down, analyze, and see what they are going to do.
So, Manuel, you telling me it's like an episode of The Voice where they sit they sit down with the headshots of everybody and they say, "Yeah, he's quite good in the high notes."
Yeah.
You know,
That's well brought, very well brought. Yes, yeah, but at the end, instead of singing or playing the piano, in this case, what they analyze is the statistics.
So who would?
Yes, yeah.
I've got my suspicions on how you're going to answer this, and this is a completely cold question. Who would be at the head of that decision tree within Bologna?
Who would?
Yeah.
Or who should?
Who is the ultimate decision maker?
We've now got two questions. Who would and who should?
Look, in Ducati, there is, for Andra to understand this, Ducati is a motorcycle company, right? So they have the factory that build bikes for selling, and then inside that factory there is a racing department in Italian called Reparto Corse. That sounds very, very cool. Mm-hmm. Reparto Corse. And this Reparto Corse is a unit that, imagine, this unit only spends money because, they have no incomes. They just spend money. The rest of the factory basically works, among other things, to feed this Reparto Corse, this racing department, right?
But the racing department must build their reputation, and that's what makes people.
Yeah,
I can
exactly.
have a Ducati.
Remember what I said before? You win on Sunday, they buy on Monday.
Yeah,
exactly. More or less, it's the and the Ducati. Look, the racing departments have basically 3 tasks. Okay, one is the marketing, correct? What you said, showing the brand, and the other one is it's a development where the engineers can develop the bikes and the technique that later they put on the street bikes. You understand?
So do they make and do things to the bikes to suit certain riders, or the bike is what it is and the riders have to adjust?
Yes, the bike is very extreme. So they try things, for example, in Honda. What you see today in MotoGP in Honda, certain technical issues or parts, you will see probably in 5 years' time on the street bikes. Mm-hmm. It's a laboratory, no? Laboratory, you say?
Yep.
And the third issue for a racing department is to build their young engineers. Yep. Young engineers go there, and there, as they work with always extreme solution, the engineers also learn. So what happens many times that the factory send to the racing department young engineer to work alongside the super top engineers, and then after 4 or 5 years, the young engineer returns into the production line.
Yeah, wow.
So it's a whole system that works basically in all factories like that, in some less than in others. Honda is absolutely this way.
So returning back to the original question, so the decision makers within the racing side, excuse my Italian, but the Reparto Corse,
did he do good? Was that okay?
I can make you laugh.
He can train. He won't do the role of an Italian in The Godfather 3, but it's okay.
I think you might need to try that next time you try to pick up David.
Everyone's going to train.
Just try to channel some Scarface.
Yeah.
That's it. Who is making the decisions to put a rider on a chassis that is being developed? And as I didn't even think about it, who should be?
Yes, look, going back to your question, sorry to get lost in the previous answer.
That's what we're here for.
The story is these racing departments, the Reparto Corse, is an independent division inside the company. So it has his own CEO, right? And this CEO is with other top management, is the one who should, I underline, should decide which rider will sit on the bike they develop and race.
But I imagine that from my expertise of watching the 2.5 movies about this, they must the amount of times they fall off or get injured. they'd have a plan in the back of their head on who they would like. It's not like they're sitting there going, right, we've got this whole, whether it's internal people, external people, they must have a bit of an idea. Or is there only ever 2 riders in a team, or have they got backups?
Yeah, look, it's so difficult because it's a real problem for these guys, because a MotoGP rider is something you cannot buy in a shop or just go around and pick up somebody. So, look, to do an example, the World Superbike World Champion that we spoke before about the World Superbike, he once went to MotoGP to sit on a bike of a rider who got injured. Casey Stoner. That year, he got injured, so the World Superbike champion, who is Jonathan Rea, went to MotoGP. You know what the chief engineer of Honda did? The first thing he did, he said to the engineer, cut 25 horsepower from the bike.
Yes.
Because it was too, he was the world champion, but it's so extreme. So there are only, it's very difficult to get there. So there is no step rider available.
And there's not huge options then, is there? Especially for someone like Ducati, they must.
Yeah, what they do, they have a rider who is a test rider. He's test rider, and when this happens, he jumps in. But it's an emergency solution. They have not somebody waiting, because if they had somebody waiting that is good enough, he wouldn't be waiting. He would sit on another bike.
Yeah.
So at the moment, they've got Michel Pirot, who's a very good rider. He crashes very well at 300 kilometres now, as we can show you that footage later on. There isn't. We have the evidence that there isn't a conveyor belt of riders waiting to come through. Obviously, as Manuel is telling us about now, they have the statistics of all these riders, and so they know what they've done in the past and where they're going. But it's up to them to make the decision in the end. Dave?
So we've established that the CEO should be making the decisions. So the question goes back again. I feel as though there's a little bit of deflection here. Who is actually?
I think we should avoid it for fun, because I want to see Dave's head spin off.
I feel like there's a but coming.
Look, it's interesting to see the CEO of the racing department. He always is going to choose the guy who is the fastest for him. Mm-hmm. But this may be a conflict with the CEO of the whole company, because the CEO of the whole company needs maybe a nice-looking guy, a guy who is good in PR. He doesn't need to be he has to be fast. But if the guy is not good in PR, or the image he gives to the Ducati, this is for them very important. At the end, as the big company finances the racing department, they are not independent. They hang of the last okay from the CEO of Ducati.
So can I just pick up on something that you said there, Manuel, as well? You spoke about the image of the company. Is that more of a concern as well for Ducati, given the history and the image, the very specific image that they have, more so than your Hondas or Suzukis, or something like that?
Absolutely.
That hangs over their head, doesn't it?
Absolutely. The company who takes care more about the image is Ducati, because Ducati is a very expensive bike. So the Ducatisti, that are the guys who ride Ducatis, they feel like very proud of being Ducati. It's like how do you say in English? Tribu, trip.
A dream.
No. A group of persons, una tribu.
Trio.
Like the Sioux in India, a tribu, one tribu,
A tribe. Oh, a
tribe. Yes, cool. Exactly.
Yes,
Sorry for my
No.
It's like a tribe.
Sorry for my ignorance.
The Ducati is like a tribe, and therefore
100%.
it's very important. It's very important. And I tell you something, the CEO of the whole company, sometimes he says it's more important what the rider transmit than even winning. But if you ask this to the engineer, he pushes his hair.
They can't comprehend that level of
because the engineer, they want
requirement.
Want to win. They race to win. They don't race to sell bikes. But this happened to all the engineers of Honda, the same. As they just spend money, they cut a budget and then spend.
Yeah.
So they don't
but
care.
As we say, for Ducati, there's just that extra element of pressure on those executives having to think about and make that decision all the time as well.
I'm gonna put the question on the table that I think there's going to be a few people out there who are regular viewers to MotoGP and would see the very familiar faces within the box, the David Tadozzis, the Gigi Dall'Ignas. How much of an influence do those guys actually have on the trajectory of a rider? Or, as you said, does it come down to the CEO and the CEO's decision?
Look, in Ducati Reparto Corse, there is one guy who rules it. He's the king. And he is one who decides. And he's so, how do you say, when he doesn't change his mind, he's very stubborn. And this guy is Gigi Dall'Igna. He's the engineer, the boss of this Reparto Corse. And his CV is extremely brilliant. And like all these people who are brilliant, even the same in the rider, for them to listen to somebody who says something against or different than what they think is very, very rare, They qualify people to, this one has the status that I listen to him. All the rest can talk, I don't listen. So Gigi is the one who decides. Around him there are another court of managers, like the one you mentioned, that is Davide Tardozzi, that is the team manager, or there is Paolo Ciavatti, who is the sport manager. But at the end, Gigi is the one who decides, Gigi Dall'Igna. And he is incredible, hard, incredible, radical in his points of view. Very much, very much. In fact, David, do you allow me to jump over the list that Ducati was doing and tell you a different story?
Yeah.
We love your story.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question. Yeah.
Yes, because...
Manuel, let me remind you, this podcast has your name in it, so you can pretty much do whatever you want.
Yeah, but, if you don't control me, I am a very anarchist. Yeah. So if you don't guide me, we get completely, we end in the sea.
This is fine. This is what we're doing. Is we lay the bait down, and we wait for you to then bite and accelerate. This is what we're here for.
Look, but let me explain you. The story is a little bit, I try to make it as clear as possible. We are talking about Gigi Dall'Igna.
Show me full anarchy.
Sorry?
Show me full anarchy.
So again, let's look. The Gigi Dall'Igna, the head of the Reparto Corse, right? And he has in his team a rider called Andrea Dovizioso, who has been runner-up in the last 3 years. The only guy who finished behind Super Marc Marquez that everyone agrees that is in another level. Okay? So, looking at this, and another date, Dovizioso is the rider who has won more races in the last year after Marc Marquez. So, it seems that he is the best alternative because having finished 3 times behind Marc, it shows that he is the best after Marc Marquez. The problem is that Gigi Dall'Igna, as an engineer, he looks at his CV and he doesn't trust him.
Really?
Even though he
doesn't trust the number 2 guy.
Yes, but
he doesn't trust.
Look, you have to think how an engineer thinks. An engineer, what cannot be expressed in figures, for an engineer doesn't exist. Okay? Yeah. So they take the figures and he look at the figures. Andrea Dovizioso has done very well in the last 3 years, but before that, he had won 1 race in MotoGP and his last world champion in 125.
So they're just looking at his overall statistics rather
than... Exactly. Exactly. I think we mentioned that before. A real champion wins since he is a kid, and then he comes winning. Yeah. So Gigi never trust Andrea Dovizioso. Okay? So in fact, it was Gigi who hired Jorge Lorenzo in the past, in 2000 and, do you have memory? 2016. 16. Yeah. Oh, Andrea.
I'm going to go buy lotto tickets. That was a good guess. No, that was a guess.
The Apprentice has come out of nowhere.
Yeah. You want to check that's right, though?
It's like in the horse race when suddenly one comes from behind. Okay. So he hired, look the situation. Andrea Dovizioso was Ducati rider in 2015, 14, and 13, and so on. So as he didn't win, Gigi convinced Philip Morris to hire Jorge Lorenzo, that at that time was Megaton. So Lorenzo switched from Yamaha to Ducati, getting 11 million euros or US dollar. Again, I don't know which money they work with, but it's the same amount. To switch from Yamaha to Ducati, 11 millions, okay, per year.
Absolutely crazy money.
Yes. And now the crazy thing is the following. So Gigi Dall'Igna, before the arrival of Lorenzo, Dovizioso was making 3 million per year. Correct?
Wow.
So as Lorenzo comes, they called Andrea Dovizioso and said, look, we are cutting your salary from 3 million to 1 million.
What?
And you have to decide within the 24 hours. If you don't decide, there are a lot of people who will accept this. So he was humiliated that way, and he had to accept.
This is Godfather material.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So he arrives, and then the first season, Lorenzo did very bad, disaster. And
that's a big understatement.
Dovizioso, this is good, the thing, Dovizioso won in a single year 6 races. Before that, he had not won one in 4 or 5 years.
He must be pretty incredible, because when you're telling that story before about the pay cut, to me, I'd think most people would have an attitude and be like, stuff you, and maybe not perform as well. But he's obviously got the right.
Yeah, but his manager was very smart, because he said, okay, you cut the salary, we accept, but put in
performance
bonuses.
Yeah.
Bonuses.
Yeah.
Oh,
performance
awesome.
bonus.
And as he has never performed before, the bonuses were astronomical, huge.
Little bit of motivation.
But the motivation was more sporty than money. But I tell you, look, for each win that year, he was making 200,000.
That's
to finish second in the championship, which he did. He got 500,000.
So there's 6 wins plus the 500,000.
Exactly. So 6 wins are 1,200 plus 5, 7, and the other podium, he made that 2 million. And at that time, I spoke with Ducati if they had done an insurance on that, because normally when you do this contract, you do insurance in case of. And they said, look, nobody could imagine this. Not even him.
Not going to happen.
Not even him could imagine this.
The engineer looked at the stats and went, no chance.
Yeah.
So who really played?
This is just the money side. The other side is much more interesting. And that's why Gigi Dall'Igna called me to his track to talk with me personally. Look, when Jorge Lorenzo arrives at the team, he starts to ask for certain things to be done on the bike. This bike doesn't work, you have to do this and this and that. That were exactly the same things that Dovizioso was telling the engineer for the last 2 years.
Wow.
So attention to the story. Then Dovizioso went to the engineers and said, look, I have been asking you to do this for the last 2 years. As you don't trust me, you have done nothing because you thought that what I was saying was nonsense. I had no idea. Now this guy comes, you hire a guy, you pay him 11 millions, you cut my salary 66%, and then at the end, you do exactly what I have told you to do.
Unbelievable.
That's a kick in the teeth.
Yeah.
So why from when was that? When's this story from? Like recently?
Since that conversation,
Which was that conversation was 2016, 2017?
Yeah, more or less 16, 17, during 16.
And that's obviously common knowledge. And
this is 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, and they have been racing together. And Andrea Dovizioso has been the number one rider and has been winning. And still, La Linea doesn't trust him because he didn't win.
And if you're Joe Average watching the TV for that, you have no idea that this is going on behind the scenes.
Nobody knows.
Because all you're seeing is, I mean, when Dovi has a good result, you see Gigi up the side of the pit wall there, shouting and screaming and clapping and smiling. And when he comes into the paddock, you see him slapping him on the back and congratulating him. No one knows any of this.
So do you want an explanation for that? He's clapping to the bike.
Oh, exactly. There you
because
go. He's
he thinks
clapping for the red bike.
He thinks, and he says this without getting red face. My bike is capable to do better than what you do. That's what he says to Dovizioso. So when Dovizioso wins, who wins? Dovizioso? No. His bike wins.
Yeah.
Was he there when this is me and my expertise again? I learned today. So I can't remember which movie it was now. When Rossi stopped
went to
when
Ducati.
they thought, and they thought it was the bike, and then he left and Biaggi.
He was the one who arrived at a firefighter into Ducati after Rossi destroyed Ducati.
Yeah.
Okay.
The passage of Rossi through Ducati, he literally destroyed everything. Ducati was like, yes, exactly.
Wow.
So Gigi was an engineer of another Italian company, Aprilia. Mm-hmm. So they hired him, and it took for him 2-3 years to build up out of the ruin what Valentino did there.
And I think there's a whole episode around Valentino's trajectory over that time as well, and how that sort of panned its way out to where we find ourselves today. I was just going to say the one thing.
Valentino squeezed down to the bones Ducati. It was like if a hurricane were, one of these tornadoes that go through Nebraska, and this was the same. It was more or less the same.
Cyclone Valentino. One of the things I was going to say was the difference between. I've always seen the footage, and you'd have far greater insight. Is that Gigi seems very contained, and whereas what I see is some of the heart and the soul and some of the marketing that goes into behind Ducati is quite the opposite. It's extremely rich, passionate, living, putting the emotion out there. And I think nothing typifies in recent memory of Petrucci's win at Mugello and Tardozzi's celebration. I mean, he was throwing fire extinguishers. He was that excited. The
Ducati, look, the Italians, they are so passionate. I imagine you have been in Italy. In Italy, you go to the restaurant, to any restaurant, you see photos on the wall, Formula One or motorbikes. They breathe racing. Instead of using the desodorante, they put on gasoline every morning under the.
But there's the reality of Gigi, the person, versus what we see through media match, because I've always seen him as very contained, always very.
Yeah, no, but he's a genius. Look, Gigi is a genius, so he's an engineer.
He needs to get
Tardozzi is an ex-rider. Tardozzi is an ex-rider, so he can afford to do this. Okay. Gigi is cold like an iceberg.
That's got to have an impact on it.
So do the two of them match each other quite well? Or?
No, look, you have been in the army. One is the sergeant and the other one is the colonel.
Oh, yeah.
If you want to know, the first thing you have to do is what I think we spoke before, is to check what you have in-house.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, you check what you have in-house. Okay, our options are this, this, and this. Is there outside anything that gives us more guarantee than what we have? If you look at the figures, the answer is no, because the guy who has been the runner-up in the last year is inside. But as I have explained you, the guy who runs it doesn't trust him. Mm-hmm. So even with these figures on the table, he will say, no, we need another one.
So if they're all obviously under contract, so how does that work? Because it's not like the person they want might not be available.
Exactly. That's it. That's why they have to do a list. So the list that is option A, option B, option C, and then at the end of the list is a gun to shot in the head when they don't get anybody.
So riders can break a contract where they are if they wanted to switch, or they can't.
No, because they switch at the end of the season. All the riders in MotoGP, with all the contracts of the MotoGP rider will finish at the end of 2020.
Oh, okay. I was thinking it was like 5 years or long term. No. Okay. Oh, that makes it way more fun.
Yeah, and in fact,
in Manuel Pecino's world, who's on that list? Do you think, Manuel? Obviously, we've got the obvious ones who are the four factory riders at the moment, and potentially Piero, the test rider. But outside of that, where are they going to be looking? Are they looking to other MotoGP teams, or are they looking to Moto2 for new blood?
Stu, do you let me leave this question open for our next podcast?
You gotta leave me hanging.
I'm also curious. I'm curious what the public's thinking. I'd love it if people comment on our
please. If you are listening, there's going to be a few days before the next one, so please like, subscribe, comment on all the social media who you think is on that list, and make sure you tag me to let me know.
Look, there is no marketing strategy behind this. No, the only thing is that it won't go for hours if I start talking.
We don't have a problem with this personally.
The one thing I will do is circle back onto a comment that Andra made about Dovizioso's mental strength of how he has had to endure, and what at times I can only imagine is an absolutely crushing environment. And to be able to get on that bike and to live, as you said, he's been able to deliver something that 23 other people on the grid haven't been able to do. That mental strength has to come from somewhere, and you've alluded in the last couple of days that you've had a very, very interesting conversation with a Chilean mental coach that might have some insight into that.
Yeah, we had in an Italian TV program I collaborate. We had the mental coach of Dovizioso as a guest. And I have to tell you that for me it was like a master class. I was completely with my mouth open when he started to explain stuff. But before explaining, I wanted to say you that the environment of Dovizioso, all the rest of the team are with him, support him, are proud of him, trust on him. But it's the colonel who simply doesn't trust him. It's like all the rest, because all the rest see what he has done, admit what the other one simply, as an engineer, look, this is how engineers think, Then the figures. Don't tell me about feelings and show me the numbers. Okay, so going back to this Chilean guy, his name is, I don't remember now. Well, anyhow, this guy is very surprising. When I was told that he was a psychologist, I said, well, another one who will lay you down on the sofa and let you talk. But he told me, look, no, we we don't work with words. We are technicians. We work with dates, the same like an engineer. So what do? The method is amazing. They basically put a lot of sensors on the head of the rider they are working with. They film the eyes, how the eyes move, the reaction of the eyes, and hands and feet. Okay? And then they put the riders in situations like they may face in the race. They have to do this outside the race because they can't put this sensor with the helmet on. So which situation they can they try to clone. They try to clone stress situation. They try to understand what happened with a rider when another one hits him, and then all this is recorded with electronic waves. Okay. And
so they could just send him to Ho Chi Minh City and get him to drive around for a day. That would do exactly the same thing.
It's the single most stressful experience of my life.
I think the machines are not prepared for that yet. So, look, then he started to explain a lot of things. And one question we made to this guy was if there was a special characteristic that all the champions have, okay? Mm-hmm. And he said, yes, it's very clear. Because he also works with tennis player, with football players, so he works with different athletes or tops. He said, yes, there are 3 characteristics that all champions have. He said, he described these characteristics as columns, the columns that sustain the champion.
The roof.
And it's very interesting. Look, they said the first one, it's very clear, is they all have a dream. I mean, a dream is a goal.
Yep.
He said, this dream in these guys are extremely inside, very, very hard, because it makes that him wake up in the morning at 6 o'clock, run 20 kilometers. It makes, when he's tired, it makes that he keeps on pushing because he thinks, this is my dream. This is my dream. Mm-hmm. I have to go.
It gives him the drive.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. This gives him the motivation. Let's call the motivation. Mm-hmm. But this dream is specially installed inside these guys in a level that we all have dreams, okay? We all want to lose 20 kilos. But these guys do it, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Or 30 with some of us. But, yeah.
So, but it's not even, I don't need to do that today, I'll do it tomorrow. It's
exactly. So it's these are the guys who, this is what gives them the gasoline to keep pushing. Mm. The second column is interesting, is the environment, the people who surround the guy. Okay? So obviously, if he has a toxic environment, it has to be an environment that helps him to keep focused, but at the same time, an environment that makes him stay with the feet on the ground. You say in English?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And an environment that tells him the things that are wrong that he doesn't want to hear.
So he can't surround himself with yes men.
Yeah, for example, there are ones who want to be surrounded by those who clap on your shoulder, and anything he does, even if he's wrong, they say, no, you are right, the other one is wrong. So the environment.
Valentino Rossi.
We've got a bit of feedback.
Who said that?
Was there an echo?
I've got an echo in here.
And then the point number 3 is the self-confidence. How strong they see themselves. I am super strong. I am no sé qué, I'm no sé cuánto. And this, he put an example, a perfect way to check this is tennis. Tennis is a sport where you face situations so strange that every time you play a set, you can lose 6-0, 6-1, and then you have to be capable to start from zero and leave behind everything.
That's not a normal human trait, is it, at all?
Yeah, and this comes, look, it's so interesting. This comes linked with what discovered the stress, how they work with the stress. That is very important in a rider. So the psychologist asked us, which were in the program, what happened to you when you get stressed? Well, you how to say, the adrenaline comes out and you get blah, blah, blah. He said,
hang on, I've just got to go and ask my kids.
But the most interesting thing when it talked about stress that amazed me was, look, the most important thing for a MotoGP rider when he gets stressed is when you are stressed, you disconnect from the present and you start to think in the future. The future can near future, or the future can be 5 seconds ahead.
Dissociation type thing, like dissociating and taking them out of the situation.
No, because you get stressed about something. Let's go back to racing. That is what this is about. The racing is, look, he says to me, when a rider drives or rides down the straight at Mugello at 350 per hour, if he, in half a second, he disconnects of what he's doing, it's super dangerous. First, it's dangerous. Second, he will never act as accurate as if he thinks in what he's doing.
Yeah.
If he goes down the straight and he starts to think, wow, a rider is behind me, where is going to overtake me? Where is going to brake? Will it be faster than me? So, then he loses for a fraction, 1-2 seconds, he's done.
Yeah, it's game over.
So what do they do with this? It's so interesting. So they analyze, and then they see in the eyes or when he starts to get in stress situation. So what they do is they teach the rider, for him understanding signs that tell him that he's going into stress mode. So to try to stop it before it happens. Okay, so they say, look, if this appears, you apply what we have told you. You understand? So it's fascinating, isn't it?
This was Eugenio Lizama. I've just looked him up.
Yes, Eugenio Lizama, exactly. Yes, he's in Chile.
Did he point towards, are some people naturally programmed to this, or is this something that everyone has to be taught?
No, yeah, I think, look, I explain you something. This Eugenio Lizama, he was there because invited by the electronic engineer of Marc Marquez, who also was a guest.
Now I'm starting to understand. Yeah.
The story the story is a little bit twisted. Look, this engineer was before the engineer of Andrea Dovizioso when Andrea was in Honda.
Yeah. Okay.
Andra, are you still here or you got lost?
Oh, yeah. I'm sitting here nodding. I'm
okay.
Yeah.
So this engineer, when Andrea's manager decided that he needed a mental change to improve, he called this neuropsychologist from Chile. He must be somebody known in the world. So he can. But Andrea didn't believe in psychologists. He said, no, this is nonsense. He's going to come and tell me the violin and so on, And so what happened? The engineer offered himself to do the experiment so Andrea could see the changes. So he could accept. And this engineer called Eugenio Lizama to the program because he told, look, this guy has changed my life. He has changed completely my approach in the whole life, how I see things. And obviously when Andrea saw how he worked with this engineer, that today is Marc Marquez engineer, Andrea accepted, and he has done that big step of having not won anything for the last 5 years and winning 6 races in a row. This is the result.
Is there a correlation in when he started using the psychologist and when he started winning, roughly?
it's not in the result, it's in the attitude. So when Lorenzo arrived in Ducati, he could have gone into the hole because he was disrespected. He was nobody trusted. Yeah. But the attitude is what changed. The guy,
so did he have the psychologist to help him with the attitude on that yet?
Yeah.
Right, okay, there we go.
Because the psychologist doesn't ride the bike. You know? Yeah. The one who rides the bike, he teaches him it's an attitude change.
I did notice that watching the videos, though, again, with my level of knowledge, you can really see the personalities and those. I think it's what you're speaking of. Like, it is quite obvious, the ones that are in that place.
Claro.
Look, it's
the ones that have got that self confidence and that focus and that drive.
And he said to me, another thing he said that was funny. He said, "Look, you realize when a champion, or guy who is already a champion, starts to decline, one of these columns starts to fail when he starts to."
It's like they're getting inside their own head.
To use excuses. When he starts to use excuses, you know, then you say, he's starting to. And
the bike wasn't very good today.
Sorry?
Didn't Max Biaggi write that book?
But look,
the Roman Emperor.
Look, no,
Dave, actually, if I just can acknowledge, I believe today is the anniversary of Max Biaggi's MotoGP debut.
Yes.
What a race.
He qualified in Japan, where he qualified on pole and won his first race.
I was there.
But it was the whole thing of Biaggi being called a contender. It was like, well, hang on a minute. I think Randy Mamola actually put it very well. To be a contender, you actually have to win. So.
Yeah. Let me go quickly back to this psychological story. He said to me, look, when can a rider start to doubt about him? With these three columns, when he wins, for example, his dream, when he wins very often, his dream may be fulfilled. So we have to look for other challenges. And point number 3, when he thinks that he's the strongest, I am the strongest, nobody can beat me. Then he thinks, for example, I am the best, hardest breaker in the championship. And suddenly a young guy arrives, you think you are breaking hard, and suddenly a young guy arrives and breaks 2 meters later. Then there is a shock. So there start to decline the self-confidence, and there is where it starts to decline the champion.
But even that alone, like you mentioned, you've got that dream to win, and from what I saw today, they're winning 45 however many times. Yeah, what keeps them? Because once you're at the top.
The championship, they want to win the championship. For example, I don't know what Marc Marquez thinks. Marc Marquez has won 6 MotoGP titles, right? I think that his goal is to beat Valentino's titles or to beat Agostini. They have to invent a dream.
Yeah, to be the best in
They have to keep on pushing. That makes him do 10 more push-ups in the gym than normal, That's the key.
Look, fascinating insight again, Manuel. This is what we've got you on for, is put that goal in front of you, and then you just kick it through, and we all stand back and look at the skill.
Yeah. We just sit there and go, wow.
So I'm sorry, but the scripts, I dynamite the scripts every time I come out.
And we don't mind at all.
No, we'll catch this. We'll definitely catch this. Once again, thank you so much, Manuel. This is definitely what the listeners are looking for. I'd also like to thank the co-host as well, Stu, Andra. Thank you so much for adding your insight and adding your participation on this day.
I'm going to go do 50 push-ups now just to see if I can get my motivation levels up a bit.
Andra, which is your dream? Okay, confess. Which
I want to be able to get up out of bed instead of rolling in the morning.
I'm just going to go and have another pie. So.
That's your dream.
I admitted defeat years ago.
Okay, guys.
No, thank you very much, Manuel. It's been amazing as it is every time the insights are coming out of your brain. Thank you so much. Thank you, Andra. Thank you, Dave, for putting this together. You're an absolute star, everybody. Thank you.
I promise that the A-list of Ducati will be completed next podcast, as long as you don't ask me anything.
I'm gonna lie awake at night tonight thinking of a list.
Well, what you can do, send it to me.
I'm just looking at the Moto 2 lineup here now going,
No.
Fabio Di Gianantonio, Lorenzo Baldassari.
The A-list too has to be riders that already are capable to win. Then there is a B-list. But we do first the A-list and then the B-list. Everything at its time.
Perfect.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
I think you're letting too many cats out of the bag at this stage.
Was there ever a bag?
All right, on to the next episode so we can find out what happens.
Look, if you are if this episode is putting a smile on your face, the absolute best thing you can do is give us a 5-star rating on Apple Podcast or within the Spotify universe as well. In there, 5-star rating and leave your comments. We're also all over the socials at the moment. We're getting our feet in that and we're expanding rapidly. Stu, where can they get you?
They can get me on the gram at quickdraw_73.
Andra?
Yep, on Instagram. On there it's Andra, ANDRA _ the Pecino Report. And we've got you can talk about our page one, Dave.
Absolutely. And Mr. Pecino, where can the universe find you?
I am in all the social media with Pecino GP. That's it. On Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram, there I am. And here, of course.
Absolutely. They've obviously found you through the podcast networks. So the absolute big one for us on this podcast is the Pecino Report on Instagram. We're easy to find there. Feel free to stop by, have a chat. As I said, I'm in there every 15 seconds. I've got 2 young daughters and I'm trying to keep an eye on. So.
Got nothing better to do at the
moment.
One
eye on Instagram.
All right, guys. Thank you very much. Go to bed. I'm going to eat something. You go to bed, please.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yes, go and enjoy the rest of your day, Manuel. Thank you.
You take care. Stay safe, please.
You too. Cheers.
Speak soon.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.